Tieu's journey began amidst deep confusion and longing that stirred a restless yearning within her. The truth about her origins had always been a shadow that hovered over her thoughts. Despite the comfort of a family that raised her, questions lingered like whispers lost in the wind. The realization that Tieu was not her biological mother slipped into her consciousness, a revelation fraught with pain and uncertainty. It was said that Tieu had adopted her for a purpose unknown, a fact that cast a veil of mystery over her past. Her desire grew fervent to seek answers directly from Tieu's mother, the woman who had reared Tieu and perhaps held the key to Tieu's beginnings. Determined yet cautious, she voiced a wish to go downstairs to meet this woman, to confront the truths and unravel the knots of secrecy that clouded her identity. Yet her caregivers worried for her health and safety. The concern that she might be vulnerable lingered in the air, the worry of facing unknown forces or being overwhelmed by painful discoveries. The presence of Mr. Henry, a kind and trustworthy figure, was suggested to accompany her, a safeguard in the uncertain terrain of her quest. Tieu's mind wrestled between the need for independence and the protective hands around her. Memories surfaced, fragments of a past forgotten or suppressed, sowing seeds of urgency. She firmly believed she could navigate the journey down the mountain alone, ready to confront whatever waited beyond. The physical path mirrored her internal voyage, a descent from familiarity into uncharted emotional territory. Worries about who to trust tangled with hopes that answers would bring solace rather than sorrow. Her departure was met with tender admonitions and heartfelt wishes for caution. The gentle insistence for her to wait or find company underscored the precariousness of her venture. Money was scattered in small amounts, a modest supply to get her through the journey alongside the kindness of strangers who helped ease her burden. Her journey was marked by acts of unexpected kindness, such as a taxi driver who reduced his fare, sensing her vulnerability. Arriving at Tieu's former home, Tieu faced an unsettling emptiness. The house was sold, the owners changed, and the trail to her mother grew cold. The absence was a void that echoed the absence in her heart. Questions multiplied. Where had her mother gone? Why had the house been sold without warning? The disappearance fueled her fears and deepened her resolve to uncover the truth. The people around her, neighbors and new homeowners, offered no answers, leaving her to wander a maze of uncertainty alone. Nearby, Tieu's grandmother and allies kept vigilant watch for her safety. They grappled with their own worries about what threats might lurk, unsure of the forces opposing her quest. The past was not just a collection of faded memories. It was connected to shadowy figures and past wounds. Reports of a notorious gangster linked to her story added dark layers to the narrative, stirring fears that her path was fraught with dangers invisible to the casual observer. Throughout the day, Tieu's journey wove between small moments of hope and crushing moments of loss. Meetings with patients of traditional medicine practitioners, glimpses of familiar faces, and whispered stories from acquaintances painted a complex mosaic. It was a tapestry woven with sorrow, secrecy, and fragile hope. Her steps were sometimes faltering, her heart heavy with the weight of unanswered questions and broken ties. The revelation by a mysterious woman that Tieu was not Tieu's biological daughter, but rather adopted for reasons tied to her real parents, added a new dimension to her journey. The woman showed a photo and told tales of complicated family ties that stunned Tieu, threatening to unravel her sense of self. The shock was profound, yet it also brightened a path she might follow to learn more about her origins. This information was guarded closely, meant not to disturb her grandparents or those who loved her, adding layers of secrecy and caution to the unfolding drama. Efforts to find her mother intensified. Visits to homes, meetings to ask questions, and the circulation of information reflected a community mobilized by concern and intrigue. Tieu was caught between the hope of reunion and the despair of continued absence. Each step was a step into deeper mysteries, where loving relations intertwined with betrayals and where the past refused to yield easily. Amidst the darkness, characters like Mr. Henry emerged as pillars of support. His presence reassured those around her. He embodied a touchstone of kindness in an ocean of uncertainty. Their encounters, brief moments of connection, offered warmth and protection as Tieu navigated a labyrinth of emotions and revelations. Political undercurrents appeared in the background. Investigations into shadowy figures, the hint at smuggling and criminal networks, and the intersections of personal stories with larger societal forces. Police and community leaders worked quietly, piecing together fragments that might explain the undercurrents churning beneath the surface of Tieu's personal tragedy. The tale of Tieu was not simply a search for a missing mother. It was a profound human journey into identity, belonging, and the quest to piece together a fractured past. Her strength and vulnerability shone through every moment of fear and every flicker of hope. The story slowly unfolded against a backdrop of care and caution as those around her sought to shield and guide her while respecting her autonomy. The footsteps she left behind traced a path toward truth, marked by resilience, compassion, and the determination to transform pain into understanding. Tieu's story unfolded amidst the complex realities faced by ethnic minorities in Vietnam, particularly regarding identity, belonging, and the struggle to uncover truth in a context where history, culture, and modern challenges intertwined. Her search for her birth mother was not only a personal journey, but also reflected broader societal dynamics shaped by national policies and ongoing socioeconomic changes. The Vietnamese government had demonstrated sustained commitment to the development of ethnic minority and mountainous regions, recognizing these areas as strategically important for the country's social cohesion and economic progress. National target programs, including the 2021-2025 phase, focused on improving infrastructure, education, healthcare, and livelihood for ethnic minority populations, aiming to reduce poverty and narrow development gaps. The remarkable achievements in infrastructure, roads, housing, schools, and the significant poverty reduction highlighted a trajectory of progress. This broader context framed the environment in which Tieu's personal quest was set. The intersection of poverty, geographic isolation, and traditional social structures in ethnic minority regions presented formidable obstacles. Tieu's search was layered with these realities. Limited access to official records such as birth certificates complicated her identity verification. Socioeconomic hardships made traveling for answers difficult. Cultural customs sometimes influenced family dynamics in ways that obscured truths. At the national level, the government's efforts to institutionalize ethnic minority policies into law ensured a more scientific and effective approach to addressing these issues. Master plans for socioeconomic development included specific measures on legal education, community awareness, and human resource development. Tieu's discovery that Tieu was not her biological mother revealed a microcosm of adoption and child welfare issues that can exist within and beyond ethnic minority contexts. Adoption, especially when motivated by complex family histories and survival needs, often involved secrecy and sensitivity. National social welfare policies sought to protect children's rights and ensure that adoption processes maintained transparency and the best interests of children, but challenges remained. In remote areas, informal adoptions and unclear parentage could complicate personal identities and social acceptance. The shadow of mystery in Tieu's story was echoed by the real-life need for robust social support systems. Her cautious steps to find her mother, coupled with the protective concerns of her caregivers, underscored the vulnerability inherent in such searches. The supportive role of individuals like Mr. Henry exemplified the importance of community networks and trusted figures in navigating complicated social terrain. The presence of dangerous elements, such as the gangster linked to her story, highlighted the intersection of personal tragedy with broader social issues like crime and security, which ethnic minority areas sometimes face disproportionately. Cultural sensitivity was paramount in managing such delicate situations. The government's promotion of bilingual education and cultural preservation was mirrored in the care Tieu's community showed in respecting secrecy and protecting her emotional well-being. Information about her biological origins was guarded carefully, reflecting a balance between the right to knowledge and the need to shield her from potential harm. The broader narrative encompassed health, education, and social welfare. Tieu's encounters with traditional medicine practitioners aligned with the growing integration of indigenous health practices within the national healthcare framework. Efforts to improve healthcare access for ethnic minorities, including investment in medical treatment and drug provision, were part of nationwide programs addressing deeply rooted health inequities. Tieu's story also highlighted the importance of official documentation and legal identity. The sale of her mother's house and the subsequent disappearance underscored the instability facing many ethnic minority households amid economic shifts. The lack of clear records or communications made it difficult for Tieu to establish contact or confirm facts, a challenge echoed by many in similar socioeconomic positions. The national push to improve legal registrations, identity documentation, and property rights was vital in addressing such issues. Investigation and law enforcement were crucial components. The involvement of authorities to monitor and respond to threats reflected policy priorities linking security, justice, and social welfare in ethnic minority regions. The coordination between community members and police to safeguard vulnerable individuals like Tieu showed an integrated approach to social protection. Tieu's inner turmoil, her moments of despair, and flashes of hope embodied the human dimension of broader ethnic minority development efforts. The story's emotional texture of searching for family, confronting painful truths, and the struggle for self-definition was set against a backdrop of national transformation. The villagers' traditional values, combined with the rapid social change brought on by government programs and modernization, created a complex stage upon which Tieu's life played out. The narrative also touched on the theme of resilience. Despite the hardships and uncertainties, Tieu's determination to understand her origins illustrated the strength of individual will supported by kinship bonds and social networks, the presence of caring elders, the protective watch of grandparents, and the kindness of strangers provided a network of support crucial for navigating adversity. Ultimately, Tieu's journey was symbolic of the challenges and aspirations of many ethnic minority individuals in Vietnam. It was a story not only about personal identity, but also about societal recognition, cultural dignity, and the quest for inclusion in the nation's unfolding story. The evolving policies on education, healthcare, social welfare, and legal protection were more than bureaucratic measures. They were lifelines that shaped real lives like Tieu's. The story served as a lens highlighting the interplay between state mechanisms and personal experience. It revealed how official policies permeated daily life, influenced individual destinies, and shaped community narratives. It portrayed a society in transition, anchored in rich ethnic traditions, yet aspiring for equity, transparency, and opportunity. This detailed exploration formed the foundation for understanding the deeper narratives in Tieu's coming chapters. The unfolding developments promised new revelations, confrontations with hidden pasts, and eventual pathways to healing and belonging. Her story continued, layered with complexity, humanity, and the hope that truth and love could prevail amid shadows and secrets. Tieu's experience visiting her mother's former house, only to find it sold and the occupants unaware of her mother's whereabouts, mirrored the socioeconomic shifts occurring across these regions. Economic pressures, migration, and land transactions transforming traditional settlements reflected broader trends of mobility and adaptation to new economic realities. The challenge of locating lost familial ties was compounded by legal and administrative transitions still evolving in ethnic minority contexts. The government's master plans emphasized land and property rights with enhanced registration systems to protect vulnerable populations from insecurity and displacement, issues starkly visible in Tieu's search. Education was a cornerstone of the broader social agenda. The government prioritized universal preschool, primary, and lower secondary education, achieving near-complete access among ethnic minority children in many provinces. The focus was not only on enrollment rates, but also on quality, cultural relevance, and bilingual approaches, acknowledging the diverse linguistic landscape that defined communities like Tieu. This multilingual educational policy helped foster identity preservation while ensuring integration into national society. Teachers, often from ethnic backgrounds themselves, were nurtured through tailored professional development to face the unique challenges posed by remote classrooms. Healthcare improvements dovetailed with education and infrastructure progress. Tieu's encounters with traditional medicine practitioners shed light on the harmonization efforts between indigenous healing practices and modern healthcare services. Systematic investment in clinics, medical training, and culturally sensitive health education enabled improved outcomes for diseases and conditions that disproportionately affected minorities. The government's focus on vulnerable groups, women, children, persons with disabilities, reflected an inclusive welfare state ideal extending its reach into mountainous areas. Security and social welfare concerns were intricately woven into this fabric of development. The threatened safety of Tieu and the presence of criminal elements underscored challenges that ethnic minority regions sometimes faced due to isolation and limited law enforcement capacity. National strategies incorporated law enforcement strengthening, community policing, and social support mechanisms to protect vulnerable citizens. The story of Tieu illustrated this delicate equilibrium between offering support and mitigating risks. Policy institutionalization was crucial. The adoption of Resolution No. 88, 2019, QH14 by the National Assembly embedded ethnic minority development into legal frameworks, enhancing transparency, scientific planning, and resource allocation. This legal backbone empowered coordinated efforts across ministries, local governments, and social organizations, fostering synergy between grassroots realities and national policy goals. Tieu's journey from personal uncertainty to seeking truth occurred within this evolving legal and policy landscape. International cooperation augmented domestic efforts, with Vietnam actively attracting aid, technical expertise, and investment focused on ethnic minority regions. Initiatives encouraged sustainable development respecting cultural heritage and environmental protection while promoting economic modernization. Community-based projects empowered local actors, ensuring that development was not externally imposed but adapted to local traditions and needs. Ethnic equality policies also impacted ethnic minorities significantly. Women's enhanced roles in education, economic participation, and leadership contributed to shifting social dynamics. Tieu's story mirrored these transformations, where women's agency, though constrained by tradition, grew progressively through education, legal protections, and community advocacy. The challenges that persisted were acknowledged candidly within policy discourse. Upgrading technical and social infrastructure lagged in some locations. Housing and farmland shortages remained pressing. Social customs such as early marriage or discrimination sometimes hindered progress. The government's strategic plans for 2026-2030 aimed at addressing these gaps with even greater investment and innovative solutions, calibrated by ongoing research and community consultation. Tieu's emotional journey from confusion, doubt, and fear to newfound knowledge and tentative hope reflected the human side of these massive socio-political shifts. Her story illustrated how government policies translated into lived experiences, enabling education, access to health, legal registration, social protection, and community support, paired with dangers, mystery, and resilience. The narrative also highlighted the centrality of social networks and trusted individuals for ethnic minorities. Kind caregivers, protective elders, community leaders, and benevolent strangers all contributed to personal safety and well-being. Mr. Henry's role as a guardian exemplified how informal support often complemented formal policy, offering reassurance amid uncertainty. Ultimately, Tieu's quest was emblematic of the balancing act facing ethnic minorities in Vietnam today. The preservation of identity and cultural heritage intertwined with aspirations for social inclusion, economic advancement, and legal recognition. Her story was a microcosm of a nation's broader trajectory towards equitable development, respect for diversity, and unified progress. The profound interrelations between policy, culture, identity, and individual experiences paved the way for a nuanced understanding of Vietnam's ethnic minority development. It beckoned policymakers, scholars, and communities alike to sustain efforts that honor complexity while striving for justice and opportunity. Income levels of ethnic minority populations doubled compared to 2020, signifying an economic uplift born of diversified livelihoods, improved agricultural productivity, new business opportunities, and social safety nets. Annually, poverty rates declined at a steady average of roughly 3%, signaling sustainable progress. These economic indicators carried profound implications for individuals like Tieu, whose community grappled with economic instability and migration pressures, evident in the selling of family homes and upheavals within local neighborhoods. Investment in physical infrastructure underpinned much of this change. Nearly 100% of communes had access to motorable roads. School facilities were built or rehabilitated to durable standards, and villages achieved near universal electricity and safe drinking water coverage. These tangible enhancements catalyzed broader societal development. Students benefited from better school environments, health centers could deliver more comprehensive services, and households engaged more actively in markets. Tieu's world, once fragmented by inaccessible spaces and inadequate services, gained new connections and potentials. Housing improvement programs replaced thousands of unstable or unsafe homes with solid constructions resistant to natural disasters. Resettlement initiatives addressed land scarcity and environmental threats such as floods or landslides by relocating families from precarious zones into safer, planned communities. These systemic changes promoted social stability, reducing anxieties so often felt by families torn between tradition and modernization. Social inclusion policies underscored substantial attention to health, education, and cultural preservation. Ethnic minorities' access to medical care improved through expanded clinic networks, mobile health units, and culturally competent practitioners familiar with local languages and customs. Disease prevention, reproductive health education, and welfare services integrated traditional knowledge with modern approaches. Tieu's own encounters with traditional medicine signified these parallel streams converging in practical care. Education outcomes were a beacon of hope and challenge. Early childhood access climbed toward universality. Primary school attendance neared 100%, and secondary education inclusion climbed steadily. Bilingual education models continued evolving to safeguard language diversity while smooth transitions to Vietnamese-dominant education. Teacher development, new school constructions, and community mobilization empowered ethnic students, enhancing their chances of moving beyond historically constrained livelihoods. The vibrant preservation of traditions coexisted with the imperative to abandon outdated, harmful customs such as early marriage and gender discrimination. Policy approaches balanced respect for ethnic identities with advocacy for human rights, social progress, and gender equity. Women and youth engaged more actively in community life, education, and economic participation, reshaping traditional norms. The empowerment of ethnic minority women echoed in local leadership and social reform. Governance strengthened at the grassroots through capacity building for local officials, elders, and community organizations. The promotion of participatory decision-making and transparency fostered trust between ethnic minorities and the state. This political inclusion was critical for sustaining social cohesion and rooting development in the cultural soil of diverse communities. public security improved with coordinated efforts among local police, traditional leaders, and civil society to combat crime, protect vulnerable citizens, and maintain peace. The experiences of Tieu and her protectors illuminated the ongoing necessity of vigilance in areas where marginalization might otherwise expose people to exploitation and violence. Looking ahead, the government set ambitious plans for 2026-2030 aimed at consolidating gains, overcoming persistent bottlenecks, and embracing innovation. The next phase focused on designing specialized, targeted investments that prioritize the most disadvantaged communes. It emphasized climate-resilient infrastructure, technology adoption, digital connectivity, and sustainable agricultural practices aligned with environmental protection. Efforts to strengthen human capital persisted through expansive vocational training, scholarships, and incentive systems, encouraging promising students and professionals to return to their home regions as change agents. The nurturing of ethnic languages, arts, and cultural heritage entered formal education more deeply, safeguarding identity even as integration continued. Financial mechanisms addressed both macro and microeconomic realities. Credit programs, tax relief, and land use policies facilitated entrepreneurship and farming modernization without displacing communities. The state encouraged cooperative building between ethnic minority and mainstream groups, promoting economic linkages that fostered inclusive markets and community enterprises. Social welfare adaptation addressed rising needs amid demographic shifts and urbanization pressures. Programs attentive to women, children, persons with disabilities, and the elderly ensured an expanding safety net. Healthcare services emphasized both preventive care and access to quality treatment, irrespective of remoteness. Tieu's personal story remained entwined with these grand national currents. Her journey of discovery was not merely one of family biography, but a metaphor for the ethnic minority collective narrative, one marked by resilience, complexity, loss, and hope. The disappearance and reappearance of family ties illustrated deeper cultural negotiations unfolding in society-wide transformations. The integration of traditional values and modern state policies provided vitality and continuity amid change. The cautious yet determined steps of individuals like Tieu, supported by caregivers, community networks, and institutional frameworks, shaped a future where identity, dignity, and opportunity might harmonize. In closing, the story of ethnic minority development in Vietnam in 2025 embodied a profound commitment to equality and justice. It reflected a society attentive to its rich mosaic of peoples and eager to cultivate potential from springs once hidden. The journey was ongoing, fraught with challenges, yet luminous with promise. The future awaited, one where communities could thrive in dignity and diversity, where children like Tieu might walk assured paths toward knowledge, belonging, and fulfillment. The state's strategic vision and the people's lived experiences together compose the symphony of Vietnam's ascent into a new era of inclusive growth and unity.